Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of the G&G Hawk MUDD knife, and it's, wait, hold on, it's not here. Where the heck did I put that little guy? It's not on the table, no. Is it under here? Oh, I remember, hold on, let me go grab it. That's right, I left it out here, hold on just a second. Here we go. Yeah, alrighty. I should keep these things in more accessible places. Whatever. Hey. That's where my watch went. Alright, well, on with the review. Alrighty, so now that I've got this little guy back here, I want to thank my buddy Pip Corona here for sending this little guy along and for very explicitly consenting to that little bit of an element of the video here. But this is called the G&G Hawk MUDD, which stands for Multi-Utility Dirt-Defiant. And its whole shtick is just that it is completely impervious to all sorts of different things. Can toss this into a pond, it's going to be a-okay. Get it in the dirt, the mud, whatever. That's its goal here. And this was designed by Grant and Gavin Hawk, who are a father-son team who are kind of the mad scientists of the knife world, and I say that with all the respect in the world. They are great, doing great stuff here. But anyways, so there you go. Let's do a size comparison and avoid getting my other knives quite too grody here. This right here is a ZT-0452CF, which is big and crazy, and this knife is not. This right here is a Spyderco Delica, which is a much more small and reasonable sort of knife. This is a Spyderco PM2. So you can see blade length-wise, they're actually relatively similar, although this guy's got a little bit more flat to the blade shape there. All right, here is the Ontario Rat number 2, and the Rat 1's around here someplace. Probably not in the bottom of a pond. But there we go, and, oh, what the heck else? You know, I think that'll actually do it for size comparison here. Oh, what the heck, a Chris Reeve Knives Large Shabazz. So, there you go. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, and, well, the grimy of this particular very interesting pocket knife. Okay, so on the good side, first off, I got to applaud the fact that there is a sharpening choil right here on this knife, which is, frankly, a very nice little touch here. I think it should be there on every knife, but this one is done well. You can see the plunge is relatively narrow. They've done it very nicely here, so I appreciate that very much. Next thing I got to praise on this guy is the fact that this is a very unique-looking knife. Even putting function aside, there aren't really knives that look exactly like this, and it's at multiple areas here. The carbon fiber, which is sort of traveling about the metal, but not all over it, is nice. Little bits of writing here. This, and then the clip. This entire knife just has an aesthetic to it that, honestly, I can't think of anything strictly comparable to it. And that's neat. And even look at this little area right here. With the plunge grind area, they've done this with kind of an exposed milling pattern that's, honestly, I don't know why. I don't know that there is a why to it, but I kind of love it. It looks just great. And so that's really nice, and this knife on the whole has very unique aesthetics that I really appreciate very much. Next thing, because of these aesthetics and just because of the overall design of the knife, there is a lot of gripability here, which is great. Not only do you have these sorts of cutouts here and the rubber boot on the lock and whatnot, but you also have a nice, this little area here is going to, basically, even if you are up in the mud or pulling this thing out of a freaking pond, you're going to be a-okay in terms of traction. This is going to stay in your hand pretty much no matter what. So that's good. Next thing on this little guy is I do like these little thumb discs here for a couple of reasons. First off, I think that they are more comfortable to use than you generally speak in thumb studs here, which is pretty nice. They're not too big and prominent off the knife. They are roughly out of the cutting path here. I mean, this is just, it's a really well done freaking element there. And yeah, it works very nicely. And I've heard guys say that if you catch it just right, you can kind of use it to wave the knife out of your pocket, which is not something I'm super skilled with, but you know what? It seems like it's very possible. So that's nice, and frankly, it works well here with the stated purpose of being grime resistant. These two have a great deal of traction, although not in that sort of painful sense that some other thumb studs can have. So those are great as well. The action on this guy is actually pretty damn smooth, and keep in mind, and like legit no fooling, guys, this is not movie magic. I did just pull this out of a freaking pond. So the action on this is just as good as before I put it into the freaking pond when I carried it for actually a surprisingly long time. And so, yeah, I like this very much, and you know, the action's great. It's got sort of an axis lock deployment in that you can use the thumb stud to pop it out there and then just pull it back and use centripetal force to get it back in there. Or you can do a more conventional sort of index finger shot, whatever. But whatever it is, it's great. It's a very different action than in a lot of knives because, well, I mean, the locking mechanism is fundamentally different, but yeah, I do like very much this action here. Next thing is that the lock doesn't actually require any interaction to open the knife. When I first got this guy, I assumed that this was going to be sort of like a safety, where you pull this back and then the knife can open. But no, it has a very soft detent, but you can use that to fire. You can use the thumb studs to fire it open with zero lock. And speaking of this lock, this is greatly positioned, in my opinion, for a right-handed user because look, another concern was that I would be hitting this lock all the time and then disengaging it. But just using this in a conventional grip here, and in no place am I able to disengage this lock with just my hand. So that's kind of a very nice thing. So I like very much that aspect of the lock, and frankly, the lock itself works very nicely. There's zero blade play on either dimension here. It locks up securely. And you know what? It's nice. So there you go. So to me, at least, that's what's good. And oh, I guess I should comment about the blade as well, because the blade is nicely done overall. It's a little bit on the thicker side, but the thing is, it's got a nice hollow grind, so it's thinnish behind the edge. The blade on it is XHP, which is a good-to-go steel from an everyday carry perspective. And, you know, just overall, it's got some flat belly. It was a pleasure to use, and I never felt myself in a situation where I didn't have enough cutting power or anything like that carrying this guy around. So there you go. With all that said, that's the good. The blade is nice. The lock doesn't require any interaction to open the knife and leads to a very smooth action. I mean, I like very much the action on this knife, although it is very different. I like the thumb discs on it as a nice alternative to studs with high traction. It gives you plenty of grip in your hand, even in damp or algae-covered conditions. It gives you pretty unique aesthetics, a nice sharpening choil. And it's a neat knife. But let's talk about what's great here. To me, what's great here is that this knife is purpose-built, and they've done it really, really well. This knife serves to address that one major thing, multi-utility dirt defiance. And they've done a great job. We are at kind of a cultural moment in the knife world right now where we are doing a lot of knives that are not super robust to crazy conditions. This knife, the ZT452CF, I don't want to pick on it. It's true of a whole bunch of things out there in the world, but uses a captive bearing sort of system. But there's no seal, there's no nothing. If I were to throw this guy in the pond, also it's a little dirt and grit and algae would get up inside the bearing race there and slow the action down, as well as all the water, as well as all the other gunk in there. This knife would require a cleanup to do whatever I just did, pulling this out of the pond, in order to function again naturally. This guy had no change in the action. And I mean that legitimately. It's not like, oh, it's still pretty damn good. No, I mean, I cannot tell the difference aside from all the pond scum that's still on it. Don't worry, Pip, I'll clean that up. It's absolutely the same as when I put it into the freaking pond. And that's honestly super impressive to me. I cannot believe that they have managed to do that, and the way they've done it is pretty impressive. You can see here that there are these seals all around the pivot in this little area here, which is pretty great. But more importantly on that, you can look at the inside of the lock here. This lock should be going, I mean, it's right here. And if we look at the scale where the other side of that is, we can see nothing. There is just a single freaking sheet of titanium here, so the entire system is sealed. So none of that pond scum actually got up inside there. And the moment that I run this guy under a faucet, it's going to be right back to where it started, clean on the outside and clean on the inside. That's really freaking neat. And the fact that, you know, a lot of people suggested, oh, we'll use a knife on washes. Yeah, but the thing is, stuff still gets between the washes. It's not a solved problem. And here they've solved the problem. And that's really cool. And I appreciate that they were willing to go all in on a kind of an obscure problem and make something pretty compelling out of it. So that is, to me, what is absolutely great about this, is that they did indeed completely freaking solve that problem. I was a little scared with the pond test, but it works great. So, yeah, there we go. That's what's great here. Let's talk about the bad. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, and maybe I'm backseat knife making here, but XHP feels like a little bit of a weird choice to me because it's not the most stainless steel ever. I mean, my kitchen knives are an XHP, and there's definitely spotting if you look at them the wrong way. You know, you got oil and things like that, and for a knife that is meant to be resilient to all things, including moisture, I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a weird choice. Maybe, they could have used something a little bit more stainless. I mean, using the acid wash will absolutely kind of forces a patina, makes things a little bit better, but I feel like I'd like to have seen something a little more stainless here. LC200N is brand new, so that's probably why it didn't show up here, but I think that'd be a great choice in the future. It's a nice steel, and it happens to be damn near stainless completely. So, anyways, but XHB is a fine steel. It's good to go, and you just wash it off afterwards, wipe it dry, keep it oiled or something, you'll be a-okay. So there you go. Next thing, this is a heavy knife. In fact, this knife is just a little bit chubby overall. You're coming in at 5.2 ounces, which is not a trivial amount of weight for a knife of this size. I mean, compare it to the Spyderco PM2, which comes in at 3.7 for a very similar blade length and overall size. Something to keep in mind, and actually it's a very thick knife as well. I mean, if we compare this to the PM2 here, we can see that the PM2's thickness is about the same as the thickness of just the titanium portion of this knife, and so this is, you're gonna feel this one in your pocket, absolutely 100%. So there you go. I got a comment, it is a little thick behind the edge. It's not God's gift to slicing. It's a nitpick, I'll say, because, well, this is a knife that's meant to be durable and resilient, and it is fine for a lot of cutting tasks. But if you're looking for God's gift to slicing, the blade stock here is thick, and, it's not going to be perfect in that way. But, it does work, so it's more of a nitpick. Something that is less of a nitpick for me are the ergonomics. Look, it stays very nicely in the hand, but for me, this clip is kind of an ergonomic mess, because if I kind of bear down on this at all, you end up with a nice little imprint of the Hawk clip going on here. Maybe somebody with bigger hands might find it more interesting, and maybe smaller hands. I don't know, but that's kind of a hot spot for me, and it is a serious hot spot. And actually, coming back to the clip, honestly, I am not a believer in the Hawk clip. I mean, Hawks, don't get me wrong, I love you guys, keep up the crazy, but this one doesn't do it for me. The idea behind the Hawk clip is that it's an active sort of clip. So in order to put this into your pocket, you actually pinch and then lift it off. Hey, look, there's still water under there. You actually pinch, that lifts the clip up, then you slide it into your pants and then drop it on there. And that provides a little bit more active retention, and it wears on the fabric of your pockets a little bit less. I respect 100% the goal of it. But I had a very similar clip by the Hawks on my Chris Reeve tide lock, and it drove me up a wall. For a couple of reasons. It was very easy to snag on things. This one is less snaggy because it's a lower profile and harder to get material in there, but that is absolutely a factor. And if you're somebody who is used to just slide it on sorts of pocket clips, this one is going to have some serious muscle memory. Maybe retention is a bigger concern on this knife and will outweigh the slight pain in the neck of actually using it, but I don't love this clip very much. And then finally, the last issue with this guy is that the detent is very light. Using this Hawk lock system here, it is it's pretty straightforward to pop the blade of this guy out just using motion. And I had on a couple of occasions situations where this guy deployed where I didn't actually think it was going to, either because the thumb studs caught on like a pocket or something like that, or just, as I was pulling it out of the pond, it freaking deployed. So the detent here is not stellar, I'll say that. I mean, it's fine in terms of actually deploying the knife as an opening mechanism. It gives enough detent for that, but it's not something that's going to stay closed come hell or high water, although it did that time just to prove me wrong. But anyways, the detent on this guy is light, and that's the last of the bad elements, the light detent. I don't love this Hawk clip. The ergos are a little bit rough for me. It's heavy, it's thick. It's a little thick behind the edge, although for a knife this resilient, I'm not going to ding it too hard on that one. And then XHP, at least to me, and what the hell do I know, it seems like a little bit of a strange choice here. So there you go. Let's talk about the ugly. There we go. Sorry, got algae in the brain here. So on the ugly front is this right here, and this is a proprietary pivot here. It's a little 5-hole sort of pivot, and they don't include any kind of tool when you buy this knife. And as you all know, that's ugly. And I understand it at some level here because they are doing something odd, and this might have actually been a design requirement, this specific kind of shape and size of pivot. Maybe they couldn't have gone deeper into there, whatever. And I also get that this is meant to be a knife that you just don't have to maintain because it is a sealed system. But in the long term, honestly, I'm not sure I'd buy that. It could be that the grease dries out or that you need to get in there to replace something. You should be able to send it back to the Hawks and they should be able to service it. But It's still very weird to me to make a very hyper-resilient tool and then introduce a point of long-term failure. This is the kind of proprietary hardware that it's pretty easy to get past, because you just arrange a couple of tacks in a piece of wood or something, it'll do the trick. But, and hopefully this won't need service for a very long time, but it's still a little bit ugly, and I hope that in the future, user serviceability is something that they consider in future iterations. Because right now, not being able to do that, even if it needs it in the long term, not something I'm super in love with. But, yeah, so that's the ugly to me, is the proprietary pivot. It's less ugly here than in most places, but I'm still not going to be a big fan of it. Let's talk final conclusions. One of my very favorite movies about film is called The Five Obstructions. It's a documentary about two famous filmmakers, Lars von Trier, who's just crazy, and another guy, Jürgen Lett. And Lars is issuing challenges to the other to remake an old movie. And these are crazy challenges, like you must remake this movie in the worst place in the world. You must do it in, 12 frames, scenes of less than 12 frames, etc. And these are terrible obstructions, but the thing is, they rise to the occasion, and you kind of find out that by adding these needless constraints, creativity can flourish above and beyond what might have been there if you just said, yeah, now redo the movie. And this knife, to me, feels like proof of that approach, because the Hawks gave themselves a constraint. It must be resilient in the face of awful conditions. We must make a knife that can be pulled out of a pond by a river by a freaking picky knife reviewer, put straight onto the freaking table, and then reviewed with no problems whatsoever. And they followed it closely, and they did it. They absolutely did it. I did not believe that this knife was going to work, but it worked. And they stuck with that spirit throughout. And what emerged is something that's refreshingly different and creative, honestly. But that said, this is a very purpose-built sort of knife, because this is the truck or the SUV that is perfectly tailored to conquer 100 miles of Rocky Mountain off-road trail. This is a very specialized machine. It's perfect for that one thing. But this is not what you would want on a 2-hour daily commute through LA traffic. I mean, the perfect off-roader can do that. It can drive through LA, but you wouldn't want to. The specialization would be wasted and adds complexity. You'd probably be happier in something a little more vanilla. And like I said, the MUDD is that capable off-road beast, but it's not the best 9-to-5 commuter. I am a boring person with a boring life. And by and large, I am very happy with a non-resilient knife. Well, probably something a little less murdery than this, but still, here we go. Little less. But anyways, this is not the knife that I need in my everyday life, but the thing is, it worked okay. But much like the rock crawler, it's not a great fit. It's heavy, it's thick, it's a bit odd, and frankly, I'm better served elsewhere. So this isn't the best choice for everybody. But the thing is, if you do find yourself regularly in the pond by the river, in the dirt, in the mud, in the water, in a conventional everyday carry folding knife, something on open washers or something might fail you regularly, then absolutely 100%, you're going to want the Hawk MUDD. And frankly, it might get you through the week. It might get you through the workday, even, in a way that no other folding knife can. And it'll still work pretty damn well as an EDC on those more boring days sitting around at home or actually going into an office. So, I mean, I like this knife very much. And I think in that purposeful situation, and frankly, maybe even outside of it, this knife is a gem. It's a spectacular answer to a very weird set of problems, and I love the creativity and the difference of it. But if you don't need the special skills it's offering, it's probably overkill. But if you're being let down by other knives that aren't quite up to the task, the Hawk MUDD here is, yeah, it's going to be a gem for you. So there you go. I got to go wash this little guy off and get it back to my buddy. Hey, thanks again for the trust and let me toss you a knife and bonds here. And I hope you guys have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. And don't worry, still running fine. Have yourselves a good one. Bye, everybody.